All right, so welcome everybody. This is Food Stories. Welcome to Food Stories. Today we are sitting in conversation with Eden Hagos from Black Foodie Co. So this is like a really cool social media group who their sort of mission is to highlight all things Afro-Caribbean within the diaspora, culture, food, ingredients, and all of the above, anything involved with that. Eden is a food blogger. She's a world traveler. She is amazing home cook and just like a wonderful personality, wonderful person to know and to meet. And so we're super excited that you're here. Welcome.
Thank you so much. And thank you for that nice intro. I'm still working on my home cook skills. I'm learning from like you and other people, experts.
Well, you know what? I think you're being very humble because I've seen what you have thrown down and it looks amazing. So I think you're in good company for sure.
Thank you.
Okay, so welcome. So we have a whole story and just the story of Black Foodie itself and how it came to be and all that is super interesting. But before we even get to that point, I thought, why don't we just spend a few minutes like connecting and just learning a little bit about you. So how about if you just start just letting us know like who's Eden, like where are you from, what's your background, and what kind of food memories do you have to start?
Sure. So, well, I'm from Windsor, Ontario. So I was born and raised, but my family came from Ethiopia right before I was born, and they made Canada their new home. And so when they came to Canada, they're looking to build here. And they were able to work together, my dad with his brothers and sisters, and open one of the first Ethiopian restaurants in Windsor. So this is in the 90s, and this is at a time when Ethiopian food was looked at as, well, it wasn't really looked at. Like there were a lot of stereotypes about Ethiopia. There was a war, there was a famine, there were all these things, and that's what was portrayed in the media. So it was really difficult for them to have to run a business when people are very unfamiliar and like the internet wasn't what it is today. But they were so proud of the food and so proud of like inviting people into the culture. And that kind of stuck with me. I watched them build, I watched them work together. I watched my grandmother make this really cool Ethiopian flatbread. It's very spongy. It's called injera. She used to sell it across the city and put it into bags, and her sons were her workers. They would take it on their bicycles and go around the cities. Windsor's a relatively small city. So yeah, those were my earliest food memories, was just watching the hustle and watching my grandparents and my parents and uncles and aunts all work together to, create this business centered on food. So that's sort of where I got like my roots from. But I think for some reason I was in Canada, and I was the only African student, the only Black student. And so I really didn't want to stick out. I wanted to be normal, and I wanted to be like the other kids who didn't smell like onions or eat like, weird food with their hands. And so I wasn't, even though like I admired my family, I don't think I was very proud of the food. And that kind of stuck with me as an adult, as a young adult. I didn't go to African restaurants. I didn't go to Caribbean restaurants. I didn't seek these things out. And if I did, maybe it would be like takeout every now and then. But I just assumed like in order to have a good time, in order for something to be important or fancy, I needed to go into a European setting. Yeah. And it wasn't something like I wrote down in a book, like, or something. It was just kind of like, in the back of my head, it's just the assumptions that I had never challenged. And
you know what?
Yeah, and then eventually
No, I was just gonna say, you know what? Like that's such a common narrative for a lot of Caribbean and African and even like South Asian first generation Canadians. Like I've heard that narrative so many times that we come in and it's just we're usually one of a few people of color who are in those environments, especially at school. And you're right, you put your lunch out and the smells like way through the cafeteria when beside you is the bologna sandwich. So people are just kind of like, what's going on over there? And it really does kind of play on folks like just wanting to fit in, that need for acceptance and that need to fit in can easily make us like reject our culture and in that desire to look
Mhm.
for something elevated and so much better. So you definitely, I'm sure you're resonating with a lot of people with that story. But before you move beyond that, like I'm just really curious about Ethiopian food and Ethiopian culture, because you said, oh, we eat with our hands, and I know there's like a few different, like there's lots of differences. Did you want to just speak a little bit to that about Ethiopian culture and then Ethiopian food?
Yes. So Ethiopian food is amazing, and so is Eritrean food. So it's pretty much the same thing. Eritrea was a part of Ethiopia,
Hmm.
then they won their independence, and that's actually where my parents were born and raised. And just like me, born in Canada with Ethiopian roots, they were born in Eritrea before it became a country. So
Hmm.
they um, the food there is very communal. So you share a platter with your family and friends, and it's this really large plate and this really large injera bread, very spongy. And I'm talking about like huge, like especially even if you go to Ethiopia, like it's so huge. It's nothing like it is here,
Yeah.
and they just make a lot of different stews, very um, delicious spicy stews, and they pour that over the flatbread and they share the platter together. And it's so communal. In fact, like if you care about somebody, like if you're eating with your child or with your grandmother, they'll hand feed you. Like they'll go ahead and scoop it and like give you like the biggest cut of meat or like the best part of the sauce. Um, the other thing about Ethiopian food is like coffee is such a big part of the culture. So that's where coffee originated, and it is a
Oh,
part. Yeah.
I actually did not know that.
Yeah, so you'll find the most like uh, biodiversity, I guess, like in coffee in Ethiopia. That's where it originated. There's a funny story about how it started. It's like a legend. I don't know if it's true, but it's that like there was like a goat herder and he noticed his goats were acting funny and he followed them to like this trail of like coffee beans and then they ended up making a beverage from it. And so that's like the legend of how it started. But either way, it's a big part of the culture, and they serve they have coffee ceremonies several times a day. So you will have coffee at night, you'll have coffee in the morning. They'll serve it with different like Ethiopian sweet breads and popcorn and maybe some candy or something, but it's very much a social gathering. So over there, you're able to like, leave work, go enjoy a coffee ceremony, come back, go to work. Like it's just a part of the culture.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's a really something people appreciate when they go into the restaurants. I definitely, once we're able to go into the restaurants, I encourage you guys to go ahead and order a coffee ceremony because it's very unique. They also burn incense, so it's very much like it caters to every part of your senses, the flavors, the scents, like the sounds.
Mm.
I think that's what makes Ethiopian food so unique. And then lastly, it's very vegan friendly. So as part of the religion there, the Orthodox faith, people fast from meat and dairy several times a week, and then for weeks on end leading up to religious holidays. So you are able to have like vegan food anywhere you go,
Yeah.
and it's a part of the culture. So you'll never feel like you're missing out. It's a lot of really delicious lentils and chickpeas and things like that.
Yeah. I know like spices are a huge part, like just different kinds of spices and stuff. Can you tell us a little bit about the kinds of spices we can expect to experience in Ethiopian food?
Yeah, so there's a lot of different spice blends that they use for their cooking, and I think that's what makes it so unique and what makes the vegan food especially so delicious because it's very flavorful.
Hmm.
So the major spice blend is called berbera spice, and it's this red um, powder. It's filled with like 12 or more different spices. And
Hmm.
what happens is like they dry garlic, you sun dry it yourself, like you sun dry garlic, ginger, shallots. But then you have all these like different spices like Ethiopian cardamom. Um, there's like this type of basil that grows there. Like there's different types of herbs that you'll just find that are native to Ethiopia and that region. So what will happen is like each family will go ahead and pick up the spices and then they'll dry their own um, ginger and garlic, and then they'll take it to the person who blends it, and then you'll have your own special blend, and you use that throughout, like, for the next 2 months, so everybody has their own blend. And then, so you'll find like the different things depending on whose home you go to. But the other spice I encourage people to try is called mita, and it's this really, really fiery chili pepper mixed with cardamom and some other spices. So it's like very flavorful, but like it packs like a punch.
Yeah, so it's spicy, because the spice level is something that's also common. So there's always a little bit of heat to the food.
There is always a little bit of heat depending, but so the other thing that we use a lot in Ethiopian cooking is turmeric as well. So anytime, like usually if there's like a red stew that has like the fiery chili peppers, there's usually something else that's made with turmeric that is like, that you can use instead of having something really spicy. And then they also make their own cheeses and their own like kind of like yogurt as well. And so they often use that with the stew. So it kind of offsets the heat.
Yeah. You know what I find amazing about that actually is just how, like culturally, naturally, so turmeric, I'm sure you know this, that it needs pepper to be able to absorb into your body to obtain like most of the nutrients. And turmeric is actually like really anti-inflammatory. So I always find it really fascinating, especially within like Caribbean and African cultures, how naturally these things play off of each other. And it's like the knowledge base comes from the elders within the community, and and usually like maybe they don't have that word, but like when this is happening in someone's body, these things kind of help to balance it out. And I feel that knowledge is just absolutely priceless. It's amazing. Yeah.
It is. I didn't even consider that, how they find ways to like partner these spices. Even like another thing we use a lot is fenugreek.
Yeah.
It's also known to like help people with their stomach or like digestion, and you'll find fenugreek in everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like absolutely amazing. Like it's really interesting when you look at the food and culture. And you mentioned injera. And so I don't know if everyone knows what that is. So maybe you can share a little bit about that. But the one thing about injera, which I find really interesting, is the fermentation process. And again, like the benefits of fermented foods on your digestion. So the fact that that's like a staple in like the culture and in almost every meal, like you have that sort of staple. Like I think it's absolutely phenomenal. Can you share with us what injera is?
Sure. I actually have some in the back if you guys want me to show it.
Yes, please.
Okay. Put this down for a second. I'll come back in a second. So I'm going to grab some injera.
Okay.
Okay.
We're excited to see this.
So, whoops. Okay, I'm back. So I actually have some of the spices. So this is the barbara spice.
Yeah.
And this is what we use for our stews. Whew, you can smell it. I wish you guys could smell it, but it's really delicious. So this is what to look for. I highly encourage, if you're going to buy it from an East African, because the blends that are not made by East Africans, they don't taste the same. And then this is the injera. So
yes. So it's huge. Yeah. It's huge. It has little holes.
It has all these little bubbles, like little craters, and it like soaks up all the stews. But that's also because of the fermentation process. And when you ferment it, it gets this kind of sour taste. So not everybody likes it, but there are different ways to make injera to make it less, like cut the fermentation time so that it's not as sour. But it tastes good with the stew. So if you have that sour taste with the spicy stews, then you're fine. But if you have, if you try to use this on its own, it doesn't really taste that good on its own. I don't like it like that. You gotta have, it's kind of like eating just like a butter, like certain things you gotta eat with something else.
Yeah, like it helps to balance. But that's a really cool thing, again, just because like, so when you're looking at your palate and how food plays off of each other in your mouth, you're absolutely right, because something acidic is balanced really nicely with something spicy, right? And so those two things, and then something fatty helps to combat like something spicy. So just even how like the meal is put together is really cool. Oh, you have a comment saying from Mildred. She just says that my family loves injera.
Oh, that's awesome.
So someone has had it. And her husband cooks a good curry that goes with it really well.
Oh, that sounds good. Yeah, I definitely think some like, Indian curries and like Caribbean curries would taste good with injera.
Yeah, if we want to do a little cross-cultural mix there, I feel like there's something there.
Yeah, I have done it like on accident, when I have like a buffet, because sometimes at Ethiopian weddings you'll have Caribbean food too.
Yeah.
And and I'm like, oh, this tastes good, but I actually haven't tried it like intentionally, and I want to do that next.
Yeah, that I think that sounds like it would be really good together. And there's a special flour because you can't make injera just with anything.
Yeah.
What kind of flour is it that or grain that we use to make it?
So the grain is called teff, and teff is also a grain that's native to Ethiopia, and it's really, really good for you. It's like rich in iron
Hmm.
and other nutrients, and it's also gluten-free. So it's easier to digest, and it has kind of like a nutty flavor to it. It's like not like as like neutral as like white flour or something. So you will taste the difference, but I actually really enjoy the flavor. And you can use it for many things outside of injera. So I make pancakes with teff flour. I make cookies. I make like any type of baked good. What I do though is I have to always like adjust the amount of moisture that I'm using in my baking because it's gluten free, it's dry. Like, so you have to kind of like adjust things. But when you ferment it, it doesn't feel dry at all. It's really good. So I think
Yeah.
like they found ways to like work with their grains and mastered like methods that make it taste better.
Yeah. So, okay, can you tell me a little bit about just the fermentation process? Like,
Yeah.
like so in, I guess, European or North American culture, like you would make sourdough, like a sourdough bread, and it's like the yeast and that's fermented. You make a starter with flour and yeast. Is it similar? Like, what's the process of making injera as far as the fermentation goes?
So the process is you typically 3 days, 2 to 3 days. And what they do is they have like their starter, just like a sourdough. So everybody has a little bit of their last batch in
Hmm.
the fridge and they use that to make their next batch. But if you don't have that, you can make your starter from scratch using, you can just use teff and water and let it sit outside for a couple of days and then it'll kind of smell funky or whatever. But like you can take the
And that's
top
what we
off.
want.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. It's what you want. Don't be afraid of that if you're going to get into this, fermentation process. Um, but essentially, if you're able to get a starter, you use a little bit of that with teff flour and water. That's it. And my mom adds a little bit of fenugreek. I'm not sure why. It's just her thing. Um, and then you mix it with your hands and until it's really smooth. And then you add some water on top. You put it in this large bucket because it's always made in really big batches. And you let it sit for like 2 days in your fridge. And each day you remove the water at the top and put fresh water on top. Um, I think this helps with making it a little less sour. Um,
Okay.
and then on the third day, there's this process that I still really don't fully understand what it does, but I'm just told that it makes the injera softer. It's called absit, and what happens is they take a little bit of from the bucket that your teff batch, like you take a little bit, like a scoop out, and you boil water, and you kind of put it into the boiling water. You mix it. What is it called? Tempering. Like you temper kind of this mixture, and then you pour that back into your big tub of teff mixture, and then you
Okay.
mix it all up, and then you go ahead and you use this certain type of cooking tool. You can use a pan, whatever you have, but it's called a magogo in Ethiopia, and then you make these really large injera pieces, and you have to have a lot of, we call it eyes, but a lot of the little craters and bubbles.
Hmm.
That's what makes it known as good injera. So if it's like
Oh, okay.
that, then you probably didn't ferment it correctly.
Yeah. Does
Yeah.
it taste similar if it doesn't have, or does it not have the right flavor also?
No, I find that it can still taste okay, but I don't know if my palate is Ethiopian enough, like because my mom can taste the difference. She'll be like they're injera experts. They will like judge it accordingly, where I'm like, this is good, this is bad. I don't, I can't tell. But I think if I spent a little bit longer there, I'll be able to understand.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like there's so much dimension. And you know what? Like it's things like that that makes me look at, um, you had asked me earlier just sort of about my experience working at the Food Network. And that is one of the things. So the level of expertise that I experience from our participants is unreal. Like you said, your mom has a palate, and I'm
Mm.
sure your grandma has a palate that she can taste the difference
Yeah,
between like good and not so good. Whereas, I'd probably eat it and be like, yeah, I like it, right? Because I don't have that experience.
exactly.
Um, yeah, like I'm so impressed culturally by these. Like we really need to focus and honor these women, predominantly women, people who cook
Yeah.
our traditional foods, because the knowledge and the expertise I've often found like surpass what I've ever learned in culinary school. Um,
I 100% agree with you. They're teaching you things that they can't teach in school, like there's just certain cultural knowledge and tips and tricks that they have. And I enjoy learning from essentially like grandmothers, like moms and grandmothers. They always know what's best.
Yeah, like our elders, it's really amazing. And like I just, yeah, honor and respect that a lot, just from what I've seen. And just the experience, like how they know how to look, what it smells like, what it feels like, what it tastes like, if it's going to work, if it's not going to work. And it's very much such um, a multi-sense experience. Like all senses are played in there whenever you're cooking, right? Smelling and the touch and the way it looks, it's amazing.
Yeah, that's true. You got to
Yeah.
be focused. 'Cause I do think like here, like in the West, like there's a lot of like, make a meal in under 20 minutes, or, multitask, listen to your podcast, which is what I do. But sometimes when you're making these like cultural foods, you really got to be present.
Yeah.
You got to like pay attention and just chill for a minute, and
Yeah.
you'll feel better and your food will turn out better.
And I think actually that's exactly part of it, right? Because I've often been at, 20-minute meals. I'm like, I don't even understand. Like, I don't know. I'm like, I don't know how that's even possible, because
Yeah.
flavor takes, like, when you want to, before they even start, they're getting their spices. Like you said, you're going to market, you're buying your spices, you're getting your aromats, whatever, your peppers and your chilies and your onion and your ginger, your garlic. You're getting all that ahead of time. Then you're
Yeah.
laying it out in the sun to
Yeah. It's
dry,
many
right?
processes. Yeah.
Like there's steps and process, and this is all like built around the one thing, which is, it's not even necessarily, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, like it's not the eating part that's the purpose of all that, but it's the community part that's the purpose of all that.
That's very
Yeah.
true. Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Can I?
In Mhm.
Sorry, I'm just going to pause for one moment. I didn't realize that my battery was dying. So
Okay.
I'm just going to go grab my charger. Sorry, you guys. It's going to be a quick intermission before this laptop dies.
Yep.
I'll be back in a
Okay.
moment.
We're interluding. Here's where
Thank you.
that theme music needs to like come back into play. Um, what I was going to share though, and while you guys are on and listening, is just like that, the importance of that community aspect of food and culture. And it's just such a central part of this East African way of like being and eating. And it's more about that community, which is really cool.
Sorry, just getting my charger in.
No worries. Does anyone have any questions, or anyone want to share any comments? Mildred was saying that she uses her injera as breakfast with maple syrup. That sounds, I could see how that could work, Mildred, because all the syrup would just like enter into those beautiful craters and create like something amazing.
That's something I personally have never done.
Mm-hmm.
Good for you, because I don't like injera enough to do that. I like it with spicy stuff. I don't really like it sweet, but I know that in Somalia they have something similar and they eat it with like honey. And
Oh,
so
okay.
there is I guess it depends on what you grew up on, Okay, I finally got my charger. Sorry, guys.
That's okay. We're all cash here. We are very casual, so you're all good. You're all good. She's
Awesome.
back.
Back on.
Okay. Yeah, I was just kind of making mention of that. Like, it's just like that communal aspect of food,
Mhm.
where in the West, we're often, like if you can manage like 2 days a week eating with your family, like you're doing a good job. Where it sounds like more in West Africa, like in Ethiopia, or sorry, in East Africa and Ethiopia, that it's actually commonplace. Like that's what you do. Like eating is something that you do with your family. It's communal and everyone's a part of it.
Yeah, it's true. There's not really like even the funniest thing for me when I was in Ethiopia is like over here you go to a coffee shop and you can like order on your phone, tap in, get out, get your Starbucks or whatever place you go to Tim Hortons. And it's fast, right? Whereas like over there, they have like, their special coffee cups. They're very small and this pot, it's called a jebina. And even on the street, like you're sitting down with a little cup, like there's no, and then they have somebody washing it on the side. Like they are the original like recyclers. They're not wasting anything. And you just got to take a moment and pause. There's no like coffee on the go. There are places that serve that, but for the most part, people got to take a minute and pause. And there isn't this like rush culture that we have here in the West.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's something that can be learned from that, right? There's something to be learned, and just about presence. Um, so I think, yeah. So before we move on, just from sort of like your culture and your background, what is your favorite food memory? Do you have a favorite food memory?
My favorite food memory.
That's a tricky question.
It's so tricky. I think like, to be honest, it's really, attached to certain people. So I really, one of my favorite uncles, he passed away unfortunately from cancer. But he was like the reason why this restaurant in Windsor started. And he was just like all about the community. He was super hype and he'd always be the one like buying bottles or whatever. Like he was the party starter. But I remember him just like letting me into the kitchen and like showing me how to cut meat or the tibs that they would make in their, like they'd serve in their restaurant. And I was way too young. I was like 7 years old. but he just thought it was worthwhile to teach me and to show me his process. And he was so proud of the food and he had so much fun. They still have like, I believe like a photo of him in the restaurant to this day, even though it was sold to different owners. But I remember that, and it reminds me of just like family and like also like just passing down knowledge and that pride that you have in like sharing your culture.
Yeah, that's a big part for sure. And you know what, like as first and second generation people of whatever descent, of other descents, it's really important. Like food is that piece that connects us with who we are and that culture. And I found that, kind of like you were saying, just kind of trying to fit into more of a Canadian way of dining, a Canadian way of doing, and what was good food and what wasn't good food. It's like you can end up being in a space of actually being a little bit disconnected and lost because it's not grounded in who you actually are, and until you kind of embrace that piece of you that is from, in my case, Barbados, in your case, Ethiopia, it's like there's always sort of like a piece that's not quite all fitting together. Yeah.
I agree with you.
So, okay, so let's see. So your family came, they had this amazing restaurant. It was, so did it do well in Windsor? Was it, or how long did they have it?
So you know what? They didn't have it for many years, like maybe like under 5 years.
Okay.
And then they sold it to somebody else, another Ethiopian family, and it's still around. So it's been, I think they opened in 1997, I believe, or or 1997, and it's still open to this day. Wow. So yeah, it's crazy. Like they've been able to stick it through. The new owners have, or they're not necessarily new. They've been in business for so much longer, but it's still around. And I think it's a testament to how much people enjoy Ethiopian food.
Yeah. And it's because I too enjoy like going out for a good injera, and just because I like that community aspect of eating when you're sitting with your friends around a table and everyone is kind of sharing and talking and laughing. It's a great experience.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is. I'm really like interested to see what happens given COVID, because yeah, I'm just curious. Like I'm not even gonna lie, I'm a little bit concerned because so much of what makes the food special is not just the flavor, but also the community aspect, sitting together with your friends, of eating with your hands, and so much of that now with COVID is like, it's
Yeah.
not necessarily what people want to do. But the good thing is takeout. Like I ordered this on takeout, the injera,
Yeah.
so you can still have that experience with your bubble in your home.
Yeah. Oh, that's a good point. Yeah,
Yeah.
because it's true. Like, so it would be hard to go out to a restaurant during these times to be
Yeah.
able to eat in that way, but definitely at home with your bubble can keep it going.
Exactly. Yeah. You can still have that feeling and everything with your close circle.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so let's kind of like move on. So you have this amazing social media platform called Black Foodie Co. And you started to tell us before just about, when you're looking at food as celebration and food as, um, like something to be like elevated levels of food. When you were younger, you were looking at more European and Western style of food and cooking. And so I know that you had a very profound experience which launched into this Black Foodie, which launched Black Foodie. So do you mind just kind of backing up a little and sharing with us like what that experience was, and how Black Foodie came to be?
Sure. So I moved back I've always been kind of in between Windsor and Toronto, but I was back in Toronto, and I was going out to celebrate my birthday, and I just, made reservations at a European place, and we were really excited. And my group we were just treated really badly. And it was pretty clear that it wasn't bad service. It wasn't just like somebody having a bad day. Like the assumptions that they made, the way that they treated us, the way that they spoke to me, especially, was because we were Black. And so it was very, very frustrating. And I left that evening so angry. I was like fighting tears, but I didn't want to give them that satisfaction. Right? I'm not a big crier, but I was so frustrated because I felt like this isn't fair. Like, they ruined my night and we paid for it. And it frustrated me. And then I used my Facebook. I wrote about it, and then so many people messaged me similar experiences. So many of my Black friends told me certain things. And some of the most sad things that I got was like advice from a good place, like my own family members being like, oh, you got to make sure you dress really nice, when you go into these places, or you got to make sure you put your purse over here so they know, you're going to pay or whatever. And just like things that we shouldn't have to think about. Like, first off, I'm not here to steal, like it's just these assumptions that, like that are made of like Black customers, or like we're not going to tip well or anything like that, or like there's just so many strategies that people have, and they might not even be aware of it so much, but like just things that people do to kind of be like, I'm a good Black person. And that is messed up. And it made me really think about those things. And it made me think about, whoa, like, how is it that I'm not supporting Black owned restaurants when my family had a Black owned restaurant? Like legit, like, my grandmother sells injera. How can I study something like sociology and not apply that to the food that I'm eating, and not like support these places? And how is it that I don't even know much about the food that I grew up on, and I don't know the backstory, and I don't know all these things? So I was like eager to change that, and I just started asking questions and sharing content online, and then that's how Black Foodie was born. It was really this platform to really celebrate our food culture, and also show that we have agency, like we have power in numbers, that you can't mess with us either. and but not even just like a response to racism, because there was that part that is a response to a racist incident, but also the fact that we do really cool things too. And we have all these places, and we cook and we make cakes and we have get-togethers, we have dinner parties like Maxine was part of, like, but you wouldn't know that if you looked at a magazine or if you clicked on the Food Network. You wouldn't think people that look like us do these things, or that we have fun, you know, like, and that's kind of too why Black Foodie exists, because we need a space. And I think things are changing now. A lot of things are changing, which is great, but they took too long, you know, to wake up. So we started our own thing, and I'm glad that we did, you know.
Yeah, you know what? Like, it's such an inspiring story, because so many times, like, we can walk away from situations and just feel defeated, and instead of, and then just kind of recoil.
Yeah.
Recoil within ourselves, or recoil within many things, or some people get angry. And I just really applaud, like, so your reaction to it, because instead of recoiling, instead of getting angry, it's like you did something, and you did something really profound. But I just, before we get there, like, there's a little bit more, like, so I don't know if everybody who is present or who's going to be listening to this recording knows, actually, as a Black person, some of the things that, or a person of color, like some of the things that we may experience just doing something simple like going out to dine. And it's like a little bit of a touchy subject, but I don't know if you would mind just sharing a little bit about what does racism look like for a person of color going in to dine? Can you help us understand what that looks like a little bit more?
Sure. So it happens in many ways. And I think what, like, oftentimes people are looking for is like, oh, they called you the N-word, they, you know, denied you service, or like very like clear examples of like, this person is racist. And that doesn't always happen. Like, people aren't, they're smarter than that, right? Like, they find better ways to exclude Black folks, unless they want a lawsuit, you know. So things that will happen that I've seen and I've been told about is you know, asking a Black customer to pay upfront, you know, when other customers are not asked to pay first before eating, or telling them that oh, sorry, we're full, we have reservations coming in, when there's no reservation coming in. They just don't want too many Black people. Or maybe they tell their DJs during certain times, don't play this music because we don't want to attract those people. And it's like, so it happens in much more like covert ways. But the thing is, you feel it when you go in there. And sometimes you also question, like, sometimes I'm like, I don't know if this is the reason, but because I run Black Foodie, I get people emailing me and messaging me, or if they know me, calling me and telling me what happened, and it's very real. And it's, yeah, it's frustrating, because it's, when you, in the past, like pre-COVID, usually people go out to eat to have fun with friends, or, you know, maybe celebrate like a life moment, or like what the way we look at like going out to eat here is it's a celebratory experience. It's a fun experience. It's a enjoyable experience, but that's not always the case for Black customers. And some of these things happen even in much smaller ways. Like, one big thing that I was told was, Black people don't tip. We don't tip well, so we don't deserve good service. And people, or that we are super loud. Even with me, they were saying that I was so loud and things like that. And Maxine knows me. Like, I am like kind of animated right now, but for the most part, I'm pretty mellow and chill. And like, it was just such like that's not my character. And that's also not true. Like, this is very much a stereotype about Black women being angry or combative that is not at all the way that I interact with the world, or the way most of my friends and peers interact with the world. But we find ourselves adjusting accordingly. And I've been told by people that they try to keep their voices down. Like, they're like, you know, don't want to laugh too loud because they don't want to be associated with something, or even people saying they don't want to eat fried chicken or certain items outside because of certain stereotypes. It's crazy the levels to which it can impact people's decisions, you know.
And it's interesting, because what that leads to is you're constantly filtering yourself when you're going out to just have a good time. And I don't know about everybody else, but if you're filtering yourself, like, how much of a good time are you actually able to have?
That's
Right?
true.
Yeah. And it could present itself in just being served last,
Oh, that's
Um,
another one. I forgot about that. That's a big one. Yes.
yeah. So you're the last, you see everyone, people coming before you, people coming after you, people who've been there, and you're sitting in the same spot for like well over 40 minutes, just waiting for your food to come.
Yeah.
So just ways of just not feeling like you're welcome in the establishment, or that you're suspicious to the people in the establishment, which you mentioned.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, like I know, I think you had mentioned in the article that you had written about being followed when you were going to the washroom, or one of your friends were followed because they thought you weren't going to pay.
Yeah, no, when I got up, like they basically were coming up with the bill, and I was like actually going, I think, to say something to my sister, and so it was very much like I felt like kind of like, why are you pressed? Like, like what? I'm sorry, I'm using slang, but like
Hmm.
it just didn't seem normal. Like that's not what happens when I go to an Ethiopian restaurant, like
Hmm.
they know I'm gonna go to the bathroom and come right back. Like, just things like that yeah, it wasn't a clear. I was not called the N-word. I've been called the N-word several times, but that's not where I was called it. But I want to emphasize it's not necessarily something like where it's like a bold like racial slur. It's just like those things that it's like that are based on assumptions that are
Yeah.
rooted in like your blackness.
Yeah, so there's lots of microaggressions that we experience, inappropriate jokes and all kinds of stuff like that. Just and as a day to day, and that need to have to like filter yourself in an establishment. I mean, for me, if people are in my restaurant and they're laughing loudly and having a good time, like I'm thinking I'm doing good, right? Like I want people to be laughing and hanging out for a long time, and just because that means you're comfortable, you feel like you're at home, and that it feels like you're in a space that you feel like this is a place where I want to be.
Mhm.
Um, so it's interesting, yeah, that isn't always how we're treated, or like what's represented. Yeah. So through there, so then Black Foodie, I love Black Foodie, by the way.
Thank
Um,
you.
the first time, and you guys are gonna love just hearing about um, this vlogger social media group. I'm not sure how you identify it, but it's just such an amazing thing, just highlighting culture, highlighting food, and just like Eden was saying, just saying like we have really cool ingredients. Like every now and then I always hear there's like the trendy like new food. And then when you're like, oh, where's that from? And when you look, it's from somewhere in Africa that people have been thriving in, and living on and reaping the benefits of this food for like millennium. And then, but this is a new superfood. And then unfortunately, things that can happen is then when the West kind of gets a hold of it, it can sort of like alter the economy, just cause like havoc on the communities, because now it's not as accessible to like the local communities, or if it's a smaller farming village, and it can't like meet the demands, and it just causes like all kinds of like distress within like the communities themselves. But like I just think it's funny, like all the new foods are not new at all, they've been around forever. So one of the things I just really love about Black Foodie is like how you highlight and celebrate all these things. And I remember the first time that I actually ran into you guys, this is like years before that we actually worked together. um, it was, I think it was one of the Black owned pop-up markets, and it was the
Oh,
first time, maybe back in like maybe 2017 or something, and you guys were there, and I just stopped in my tracks. I was like, Black Foodie, this is amazing. I was like, what is that? And I was like super excited just to see it, because I'm like, that concept had been in my head for a long time, and I was so excited to see that someone like ran with that concept and was highlighting Afro-Caribbean like food and culture. So I'm going to stop talking so you can talk.
awesome. I didn't even realize that you were at the Black owned market. That's
It
cool.
was the first
Yeah.
time, and I think I spoke with Ellen, because I
Oh,
was
okay,
like,
that makes sense. Okay.
yeah, and I was like, what is this? And you guys, I think you guys had aprons, and I was like, oh,
Oh, okay. Yeah.
t-shirts or aprons or something
Yeah,
like that.
t-shirts, yeah.
Maybe t-shirts that said Black Foodie, and I just thought it was like the most brilliant thing in the world. Um, so anyways, can you tell, okay, so for those of us, so I don't think a lot of people know like who you are, what it is. Can you share about Black Foodie?
Sure. So it's evolved. So that's a good point. And I'm still trying to figure out how to say it in like a concise way, but like it's essentially a media platform. So we use channels like social media, our website, um, you know, trying to do television, like we were pitching. We have so many ideas, but we really want to see ourselves represented in positive ways in the food space and really build a community as well. So it's we share content, but we also help people create connections, help them find their next caterer, help them find the next, you know, restaurant to go out and celebrate, or place to get takeout from, or ingredient to purchase. So I think we're really, you know, a resource, of a platform and a community. And in the past, we did events, and I so look forward to doing events again. But we've shifted. So, for example, tomorrow is the first of our like Black Foodie Picnic Day series, and then we have something else coming up in September. So just the way that we're doing events is a little bit different. But I forgot the original question. Is like, what do we do?
Yeah, yeah, I think it was about that. But you can. I was just asking what Black Foodie is, and so I
Yeah.
think you did a good job
Okay.
explaining.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, and like I've been following a lot of the stuff that you guys have done, and so the Black Foodie battle was really fun.
Okay.
Do you want to tell us a little bit about what that was?
Sure. So we created, so right when COVID, you know, started and everybody was, you know, in their homes, we noticed so many people that were not cooking before were cooking and really like taking pride in what they were making. And we thought, okay, let's do something fun. Like everybody's like, you know, trying to be a master chef. Let's see if we can create some competition between them, find a way to create community, and also spotlight ingredients that are, you know, a big part of Black food culture, so we can teach people at the same time. So
Amazing.
we did this thing called Black Foodie Battle, where each week we would select an ingredient from the culture, things like okra or
Hmm.
I'm trying to remember, black eyed peas, or, you know, coconut, like, or corn flour, things that are like very much like seen in different parts of Black food culture across the globe. We would choose, and also things that you won't see on mainstream outlets. You know, they're not exciting, they're not, you know, cool to those communities, but they are very cool to us. So we chose those ingredients, and then we would teach people along the way throughout the week, you know, showcase recipes from that group. And then we had competitors from all over who would, you know, send us their videos, and we put it together and into an episode. So we had 8 episodes in the series, and it was crazy. Like somebody made, our first ingredient choice was plantain. And if you
Yes.
have, you know, plantain is so delicious, and you can find that in South America and the Caribbean, and, you know, in West Africa, everywhere where you find, not everywhere, but a lot of places where you find like a part of the diaspora. So one of the contestants made plantain gnocchi. Another person made plantain chocolate chip cookies. Like just very crazy, interesting ways to use the ingredients. And our last battle, we chose a theme, fried chicken. And fried chicken,
Oh.
yeah, I loved it. It was so good. Um, and the Toronto chefs came, oh my God, the Toronto contestants always brought their A game. But with fried chicken, we chose that because it's something that is also, you know, packed with a lot of stereotypes, negative stereotypes about Black people. But if you actually learn about fried chicken, you'll see that it is such a big part of our celebrations, and has helped, you know, Black women in the past after the Civil War gain their financial independence. Like it's
Yeah.
been such a source of empowerment that's been
Hmm.
twisted. And so
Yeah.
we wanted to like change that, and we brought in a food historian, somebody who's written like several books about soul food. And then we brought like Chef Suzanne Barr, who is an amazing, you know, chef, right? And so it was cool. I think we were able to add context to things that people enjoy eating, or maybe they had a little bit of like apprehension towards,
Hmm.
and do that in a fun way where it's like a show that's entertaining. And we really want to do it again, and do it bigger and better.
Yeah, it was so fun just to watch the home cooks. Like some home cooks were like just dressed up to the
Oh
nines. They look
yeah.
amazing, and they just like threw down some amazing food. Some people were all like in their chef whites and just like more professional and going through. But I love that it just brought everyone together, because you know what, food is a thing that everyone can do. And you don't need to sort of elevate one person above the next. It's like skills and ability. It just like transcends so many things. And can I tell you, when I watched the plantain battle, and when I
Oh,
saw that gnocchi, I came to work the next day and I made
really?
plantain gnocchi because I was like, this is the most brilliant thing in the world. And then I
Oh,
made everyone
wow.
taste it.
I didn't even know that. That's so cool. How was it?
It was like, I think, well, we'll have to ask, my coworkers, but they all ate it. So that was a good
Okay.
sign. That was a good sign for sure. And then I sort of made like a Creole sauce to go on with like the onions and the tomato. Oh, my coworker
That
said it
looks
was.
delicious. I trust that. That sounds so good, especially Creole seasoning and sauce.
Oh,
Ooh.
it was like, I was just like, I was like, this man is brilliant who made this plantain gnocchi. It just like blew my mind. Yeah, no, for sure. And next time, so my request for the next battle is cassava.
Ooh, that's a good one. I love that.
So
Yes.
cassava needs to be like in there for sure because I'm obsessed.
Yeah.
Anyone who's done my classes can attest that in all, like, I'm just always like, here, we got to use cassava
Yep.
and breadfruit.
Oh, that's another good one. Oh my gosh, yes.
Yeah.
Okay. I like that. I do want to do that. You know what we did was like, I think now things are shifted a little bit. We were trying to find like staple ingredients people might already have in their
Mm.
pantry because we didn't want what happened was people would message me and say, hey, oh, I don't have that, but I'm going to go to the grocery store tomorrow to pick it up. And I was like, no, don't go to the grocery store.
Yeah.
because I didn't want people to like put themselves at risk. But I think now things have relaxed a bit and everybody has masks and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
why not have cassava or breadfruit or something and see what people come up with?
Yes.
Especially too, because there's so many different, like I think there's cassava flour. I have some
Yep.
in my house, and I think people make fufu with cassava too. So
Yep.
there's
You
so
can
many
make it.
different ways, to use it.
Yeah. Cause that ingredient, it just like, I'm gonna go on my cassava like tirade now because I'm just like
Yeah.
totally obsessed with it. But because you know what, I just found so many cultures use this ingredient
Yeah.
from like Colombia to Brazil to the Caribbean to throughout Africa. Like it's so prominent to even like Asia. I didn't know this beforehand, but I learned that tapioca is a derivative of cassava, which you find in like
Oh,
bubble tea and you know what I mean? Like it's
yeah,
like, yeah, so cool. 6 degrees of separation through cassava.
that's true. Yeah, I'm gonna so look into this. This is dope. Now I want some cassava after listening.
Right? Some cassava fries. Oh man, it's just crazy. It's just crazy. Anyways, I went off on a tirade again, so I'm gonna like bring it back. So you mentioned that you have like the picnic series that's going on. So can you share with us what that is?
Sure. So, with restaurants being operating in different ways now and people trying to have more safe ways to gather and celebrate, we notice like picnics are the new brunch. People are
Mm-hmm.
organizing picnic birthday parties, picnics in their backyard, on their patio, whatever, like the deck. And we when I see like picnic food in the mainstream, it's oftentimes like cold sandwiches or certain things that are not really reflective of our culture. But I think there's so many African and Caribbean and foods from Black food culture that are great for picnics. So we wanted to kind of like switch around things and give people an exciting way to engage with African and Caribbean food outside, and also for them to hopefully try a new product or support a Black business in the process, and order takeout, like special picnic takeouts from these
Mm.
restaurants. So we got a couple of restaurants to participate from Toronto and caterers. We have somebody tomorrow from Montreal who makes these
Okay.
like African food picnic baskets. She's going to do a takeover. So we really just want to show people across the board, whether they're in the US or Canada or elsewhere, how they can enjoy a Black foodie picnic at home and like give them the resources to do so. So we've got a playlist coming, we've got articles coming. I think it's gonna be really fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what? And like picnics, yeah, they're great times in any occasion and you get to be outside, you get to experience nature and then sitting around and definitely because like Black folk know how to picnic, right? Like it's such a big part of culture. Summertime comes, there's always someone's house, there's a barbecue at, there's always something going on.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a great, it's a really nice way to bring people together during COVID.
Thank you. Yeah, that's a good point too, that we found ways to, no matter what, when I think of like my memories as a kid, I remember going to the park with my family and everything. Like we celebrate outside. It's a big part of our culture. We might not
Yeah.
call it a picnic, but it is what we do, you know.
Yeah, just celebrating food and each other
Mhm.
outside, or just any opportunity. So it's really cool. Um, so you know what? Like I think it's really cool. So your experience happened in Toronto, but Black Foodie now has like blown up to reach. It's in the U.S., like all over the world, really.
Thank you.
I see that you have like people following you, and just restaurants and all kinds of things that you interact with is like global at this point. It's no longer just like a Toronto sort of initiative. It's
Mhm.
like a world initiative. So we get to learn a lot about Southern US foods and culture. We get to learn a lot about African foods and culture. And like from the West to the North to the South to the East, it's all so different.
That's
Um,
true.
yeah, so that's like really exciting. And then all through the Caribbean as well. So it's not one kind of food, one specific, but it's like the commonalities within that, and how amazing that you're touching on this like sort of global um, this global stage at this point. So
Thank you.
I know you experienced like a big influx after the George Floyd, or was it before that? Like I know after that blatant racist act upon this human being happened, more and more people started paying attention to all things Black and Black culture. Is that I may have been making an assumption, but is that when you really saw like this really broad expansion of Black foodie? And what have you noticed, and has anything changed within those times?
Yes. So things have definitely changed between pre George Floyd and after.
Yeah.
Uh, when it comes to like the community buying into Black foodie, I think we've always had the community support. I think like you were mentioning when you saw it, you're like, yeah, like that's what I've noticed. Even when I wear the shirts, like people stop me and say, "Oh my God, I'm a Black foodie," or like people immediately relate, or other foodies like from other parts of like the world or different cultural backgrounds. They just love the food. They're super interested in that perspective.
Hmm.
That part wasn't hard, but the part that was hard was getting brand partnerships. And as like a media platform, that's what we need in order to, grow and do bigger and better things in terms of content. So I definitely noticed a shift in which like um, more agencies were reaching out, more brands were reaching out, and you know coming to us. And it's really it's an interesting feeling because obviously I'm excited. I really want to do this, and I'm like, finally, yes, like I can do the things. I've been really blessed in the past, 2 months, in a time where a lot of people are going through it. But at the same time, it is a little bit frustrating because I know that we were doing something worthwhile before they witnessed somebody like brutally murdered on screen. And I think like, especially in Canada, like I know I want this to be addressed, is that there has been this kind of like assumption that you don't want things to be too Black, or if it is Black, then it can only appeal to other Black people. And Canada doesn't really have many Black people, so kind of like, what's the point? So, and I think that was the frustrating part, because if you see my DMs or my messages, like it's global, like not global, like it's people from other cultures, it's white women, it's Asian men, it's
Yeah.
Black women, like there's so many different people who just love the food and who are interested in this cultural context, and who trust our opinions and who trust our recommendations. And so I've been trying to say that to brands for years, like, hey, we can use your pot to make an Ethiopian stew that anybody can make, or different things like that. So in all the partnerships that I'm doing, I'm trying to add, the cultural element and just showcase that, yeah, it's not only successful, like sometimes it's even more successful because it's new to that audience, like they haven't seen this before. So yeah, it's been an interesting time, but I'm glad that Canadians are starting to acknowledge how whitewashed a lot of things that they were doing in food was. You
Yeah.
know, it just it I think here the most frustrating part sometimes of doing something very proudly Black in Canada has been being ignored. You know, it's not necessarily like people were hating or things that happen too sometimes, but it was just being ignored. Like you're just not included, you're just not invited, you're just too political, or you're not worth
Hmm.
knowing, even when we are reaching more people, you know, than our peers. So I'm glad they're starting to wake up, you know.
And it just like, it's true. It just like really gives opportunity to highlight and to just showcase that there are professional ways of cooking that isn't what like we know, right? So maybe I'm sure grandma making her injera daily
Mm-hmm.
isn't part of a French brigade system, which most, like a lot of restaurants are run in, but it's like she's clearly demonstrating entrepreneurial, organizational, mad culinary skills, you know, because you don't stay in business making things that are not good,
Yeah,
right? And
that's a
and
really great
so
point.
yeah, right, so she like, so it's like it's really, I think you guys are doing a phenomenal job just like highlighting these things and showing that though it's different than what we've learned, um, is this is fine dining, this is haute cuisine, this
Yeah,
is like, you know, food worthy of this price point.
yeah.
I think you guys are really doing an amazing job showcasing that it can look different and still be like top notch, amazing quality.
Mm-hmm. Thank
Yeah.
you. I appreciate that. It means a lot coming from you. And I definitely agree with, like, yeah, changing kind of the perceptions of what is good food, even what is healthy food. You know,
Mhm.
there's so many health foods that come from our cultures, and even our cooking processes and things like that, while we're still using products from these like major retailers. We're still going into, you know, the grocery store to
Yeah.
purchase this. We're still going into Canadian Tire, like, you know, all these like places, but we're just using it maybe a little bit differently. So that's the part that's like really I'm glad people are starting to notice, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I think bridging that gap and it and just showing how, yeah, you know what, like this pot company, we
Hmm.
need a heavy cast iron pot to, or dish to do A, B, and C. We use this, but you know, hey, if we partner up, like we can do so much more, and it's good for everyone all around. But it just shows like how it's just not recognized in the same way. In a way, when people see Black cuisine or Black food culture, is just not looked upon the same way.
Yeah.
A perfect example is, again, like a Caribbean restaurant, just and even how you were talking about like the spices, we talked about that a couple of times. So in Caribbean culture, we have our seasoning. So
Hmm.
same thing, right? So you have your green seasoning. This is your all-purpose seasoning, and it's like a process. So you're and hand chopped is better than blended in a processor. So if you're going to be hardcore, like my dad is super hardcore and he is chopping all his onions. So it's like a mix of like onion and garlic and green onion and thyme and parsley. It's a mix of spices, Scotch bonnet peppers, and it's like all mixed together. And again, if people have been in my class, you know, we've made green seasoning a few times before, and it's just the all-purpose seasoning. But there's like time and love that needs to go into making that before we even get to seasoning our meat.
Yeah.
Um, and so to me, that's skill and that's elevation. But when we go to a Caribbean restaurant, or when anyone goes to a restaurant, we're expecting like a low price for that
Ooh,
food.
that's a great point. Yes.
But
It's
I just see mad skill being put into just even getting, before we even get the chicken on the plate, like before it goes into the oven, there's
you're
all
right.
this happening in the back end, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a very great point, that oftentimes the even the cuts of meat, like oxtail and things like that, it is actually very expensive. It's labor intensive. It takes like certain skill level and techniques to produce, and preparation, like a lot more prep goes into it. But there is this assumption that it should be cheap, like that African and Caribbean food, it's cheaper, and that like something like when I just think of pasta, I'm like, yo, that is so so cheap. You know, obviously I'm not talking about like freshly made pasta. Of course, there's a skill and it's amazing too. But like people are willing to, you know, dish out and pay for that. But that doesn't happen. And I think like part of the reason why is because they don't see it, right? So like if we are completely erased from like mainstream food magazines and the Food Network and all these things that make food exciting to like the general public, then it is a lot easier to kind of dismiss it as cheaper or low skill level or anything like that. And that's another thing that I've been like talking about on Black Foodie a lot is like right now there's this push, like there's so many lists that were circulated a couple of weeks ago on Black owned businesses, Black owned restaurants, Black owned thing. Oftentimes not even correct, like not, it wasn't all like Black owned, but whatever. They were putting these lists out, but I'm like, but you know, like how the heck is somebody going to order from this Ghanaian restaurant if they have no idea what the menu items are? They've never seen it before. Like there's no context. Like you can't just make a list and keep it pushing. You need to go and show the food. You need to show them how to eat the food. Like you need to include this in your programming so that they don't need a list. Like they're already like enticed and familiar with the foods. And I find that like personally, like here, I've been ordering so much takeout. I had Greek food one night. I had Thai food, and like I've never been to Thailand, but I can tell you I want a cow soy, like I want like all these different things. Like I know I've been taught, like I love the food so much. It's so flavorful. And the thing, and I have that same excitement for African food, and I can see like even me as somebody who's not Thai, like going and reading complicated menus, but saying, oh no, I want this, and choosing it, that this can also happen for African food. But we just got to show it, you know, we got to show people what it is and entice them and get them to try it. And that's not going to happen with just a list. Like you got to go into those places and things.
You know what? That is such a very valid point. I actually hadn't thought of that, but you're right, because food is an experience. And when you're going in and you have no idea what that experience is going to be like, that's going to inhibit like what you do there, or if whether you're even going to enjoy it.
I think in the past, like, and I was guilty of this, like I'd be like, okay, you know, these mom and pop shops, they've got to like learn marketing, they've got to do this, and a part of it is, yes, you got to keep up with the times, but also like they're starting from scratch because the fact that these outlets would never go in there, yet they were going to show you how to make some tortellini thing or whatever, like 5 different ways, or some barbecue thing, like things that are also delicious, but like you could share the love and put some of these other cuisines on your platform.
Yeah, and just like highlight and focus it for sure. One thing that I did notice though is so these lists are getting circulated, they're getting pumped out, and then everyone's on board, they've bought in. Like you said, they don't really know what to expect necessarily when they go in. And then also some of the businesses, if they are like more like a mom and pop style, or just, you know, someone who isn't as acclimatized to the culture here. So kind of what's been happening, or what kind of some feedback I've been getting off of social media is comments about like maybe the service isn't up to par, or like just all these comments. Meanwhile, if there's this business who, you know, was used to doing this much business on a daily basis, and then especially with COVID, it's now everyone's on board and like they're being flooded with business. And then there's a little bit of, you know, like, so it's like, it's just like a learning for everyone. And it's like, I just feel like people need to like, put out a little bit of grace towards these business owners as they learn and adapt, because just because you're on board today, you weren't on board yesterday. And so now they need to know how to adjust themselves. Right. Have you heard anything along these lines?
No, you just kind of like opened my eyes to something I hadn't considered, which is like, you know, not being prepared to handle like this influx of customers. I mean, I've noticed it in the past where definitely, people, and also even within the community, like Black foodies hold Black restaurants to a higher standard. So they might not be as like forgiving or patient when things don't go as planned. And I always was like, come on, just give them a second chance. Cause like guaranteed Starbucks got your order wrong and you still went back. Like, you know what I mean? Like you're why not give a little bit of grace to the small businesses that are oftentimes running on less resources. They don't have like outside investors. They might not be understaffed and things like that affect like their ability to produce at the level that their competitors are able to do. I do think there's like stereotypes about like, oh, a Caribbean restaurant is good if it's, bad service, like just certain things that I'm like, I don't know, on surface level, okay, it could be kind of funny, but at the same time, I'm wondering, does that inhibit us? Like, like, is this something, do we want to push this, like, mindset, or is there just like, different understandings of service? Maybe that makes sense in a Western culture, like the one thing makes sense, but in that context, it doesn't, because I can tell you when I went to Ethiopia, I was like very surprised. I remember somebody at a pizza restaurant, he legit like went, he was so frustrated by my request. I was so stunned. And it was like, it wasn't because I was like he's also Ethiopian, you know what I mean? It is what it is. Like people just tell you what it is. They don't have to sugarcoat or like pretend to serve you. And I think kind of like in the Western context, there's this like, you want like service, and sometimes I'm like, what is good service? Like, do you want like a servant? Like, why do they have to smile at you? Or like certain things, like, I don't know. I have a lot of questions. I don't really have an answer for it, but I do think, yeah, it's important to just chill and give people a break. It's a tough industry and they're going through a tough time. So if they're willing to get into a kitchen and cook, like, be a little forgiving and chill about it.
Yeah, you know what, and that's what I say, because there's so many different things, and oftentimes, like, if if you've been working at building your business and there's been barriers and you've had struggles, and all of a sudden, like, there's this, like this new influx of people, like, yeah, you got to take a minute just to adjust. And like you said, I'm sure, certain common restaurants that we go in and out of on a regular basis have gotten our order wrong, or maybe we haven't had the best service there also. But yeah, it's like a different expectation. Yeah, sometimes it's just about looking at our expectations, and in the end of the day, does it really matter? Right? Like, as long as it's one thing when if someone doesn't smile, is different than if you're being watched, when you're
Yeah,
in an yeah. So
that's
it's
a
kind of
really
like,
good point. Yeah, I think there's that good separation. Like there's a big difference between yeah, maybe not having the most cheery face to being questioned, or like your presence there being looked at as a threat. Like very, very different things. The other thing I wanted to mention is like the fact that like I do think funding has a lot to do with this. Like if restaurants aren't able to get like the same loans as other people,
yep.
they aren't able to actually one restaurant owner told me she ended up removing the fact that her restaurant was African in order to get a bank loan, because
Wow.
people, yeah, and the reasoning was like people were questioning like, oh, it was a fine dining African restaurant in Montreal, and like people were like, fine dining African food, like the bank folks were not understanding. And so it wasn't necessarily they were saying, oh, you're Black and you can't have it, but more so there's this extra line of questioning that happens because they find what we're doing new, or it's a risk for them. And so she had to start with what she had, and I think that's what a lot of Black restaurant owners have to do across the board. They just got to make it work with what they have. Maybe they're using their cousin in the front who didn't want to be there. Like maybe, you know what I'm saying? Their son is like, you know what I'm saying? Like there's certain things when you understand why, you might be a little bit more chill, and also maybe question like, why is it harder for them to get the same resources that somebody young and not Black is able to get, without the same experience? Yeah, or if they're immigrants and they don't have like credit here, you know, like they don't have the same resources. There's all these layers that add to it.
Yeah, and you know what? Those are just things we need to keep in mind as um, sort of like systemic racism is just coming more and more into our forefront and our understanding. It's like you can kind of see how these issues would play more profoundly on certain businesses. So we can't necessarily always go with the reaction to things. There's always stuff in the back end, right? Like you said, like can't even get a loan to get your business going. And we
Yeah.
know of, and I've seen you highlighted a few of the restaurants who haven't made it
Yeah.
because the same resources that were offered to business owners, they weren't offered to all business owners. And some of, some really good, talented chefs are now like out of their businesses.
Yeah. That's another great point. It's a lot of a lot of things that are happening that are unfair, that are affecting Black Canadians like a lot in this industry. And
Yeah.
there's got to be something about it, because it is happening in more covert ways. One restaurant owner, like their landlord, I guess, told them, "Oh, I didn't expect you to be so successful. Pay us way more." Like within their first few weeks of opening, like that is, to me, a certified hater. Like, like they are like hating on their growth. Wouldn't you want your client to be doing well, not like, surge up the prices just because you see them have a good opening and then they had to move locations? Like, this is
Yeah.
not okay,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So lots of barriers, lots of things in place that just make it that much more challenging. And even just trying to like fit within mainstream spaces. So there's like certain areas in the city, like, so we're in Toronto, well, we're in York region, but like just in the GTA, speaking about there, it's like there's certain areas that it's sort of acceptable for Black owned businesses to be like in certain spaces. So Eglinton West, you're okay over there. Scarborough, you're okay over here. Like, so there's certain places that it's like acceptable. And then when people try to like break through those sort of barriers and be more mainstream, be more in the city, be more downtown, be more part of the flow, that maybe will get covered by some of the common like media groups to get on the top 10 lists and things like that. When we try to like infiltrate those spaces, and the playing field is definitely not even. And that's the example you gave is a perfect example of that, right? So
Yeah, that's a really good point. There's so many, I guess this discussion could go on forever, but essentially because racism is systemic, like people face it at every level, and it's oftentimes like more covert, and it's just like it can be very frustrating because businesses are challenging regardless. But when you are having, I remember one business owner who had a really popular restaurant for like over a decade in the downtown area, telling me that when he opened one of his restaurants, like people kept calling officers on him because they just didn't like the fact that there was so many Black people in one place and it was happening by where they lived. And you know what I'm saying? Like, that is horrible that he had to like have to have that interaction with police so often when he has a restaurant, like this doesn't even make sense. Why would you call the police on a restaurant that's doing well? But it's because they didn't want that clientele
in their area.
And that's really messed up.
Yeah. And it really is. I could talk to you all day. Like, I'm just so enjoying this conversation. I'm checking the time and it is actually 12:25. So we're kind of wrapping up towards the end. This has been so insightful, so interesting. Just one comment I had earlier before we wrap it up is just, I had someone asking about Ethiopian restaurants in York region. Are you familiar with any Ethiopian or even African restaurants in York region? And if you have any suggestions for what we would order. I totally put you on the spot. So if you don't.
I don't. I know that there are, when it comes to Ethiopian, I actually don't believe that there is one in the York region, not yet. Because I have been asked that before. A lot of the Ethiopian restaurants are on the Danforth or on Bloor, like in neighborhoods where there are more East Africans, or where their churches are or their mosques are. Like eat
Yeah.
out there. But other African restaurants, I'm sure that there are. I just don't remember at this moment. Sorry, guys.
That's okay. I totally
Yeah.
put you on the spot.
Yeah.
But you know what? So, folks, the best way to find out is to follow Eden at Black Foodie. So she has two social media channels. So one is Black Foodie Co.
Mhm.
And the other one, or .co, if you're looking it up on Instagram. So we threw up the links there. And the other one is Eden the Foodie. So you can follow her personal blogs on there. Any of the links, if you want to contact them, their website, Facebook page, we just threw those up so you can
Thank
keep
you.
in contact. And so, yeah, if you want to know about restaurants, places, reviews, book authors, chefs,
All the good foods.
ingredients, all of the above, just follow what they're doing. Send some love, send some support. They are just super amazing. She has a team of 3. Is it 3? Yeah.
Yeah, or yeah, me, Ellen, and Kemla right now.
Yeah.
And you got to meet them. Yeah, awesome.
Yeah. So there's a team of 3 who Eden is the face, but the other 2 are just super amazing. Like they just keep the content flowing. Like their visuals are awesome. The photography, the editing, everything is like really, really great, and they're really doing an amazing thing. So send some love, send some support their way for sure. And I just want to say a huge thank you for being here, for just sharing your story, for just kind of chatting it out with me. It's always like good to have these conversations and to throw them out there. And so I'm super appreciative that you came through. I know this woman is busy. When I say she's busy, this woman is busy. I caught her. I'm wrapping up, team, but I was just gonna say I caught her at 12 a.m. the other night, doing an Instagram live.
Yeah, I'm doing too much.
Yeah.
But yeah,
So
thank
I
you.
caught this woman at 12 a.m. She is working hard, and so let's send some love and let's support. So thank you so much for being here. Our next food story is the link is just up there. It's on sorry, I should have had this a little bit more prepared. So it's going to be on July 30th. Our next food story, you're not going to want to miss it. It is with this lovely lady. Her name is Radha. She is an advocate in food justice, and she is one of the professors at Seneca College. And she just has an amazing story about just connecting people through food and about food justice. So you want to be here to check her out on July 31st and at 11 o'clock. So we will see you then. And I say thank you so much, Eden, once again. And look forward to just connecting with you at a different time.
Same. Take care.
Take
See you
care.
guys.
Bye, everyone. Take care.